Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of CCSTV. We just wanted to take a quick moment here to remind you guys that CCSTV is about featuring all Canadian Carp Society members. So if you guys want to participate, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We can come up with ideas if you want to make content of your own to add into these episodes. Just any sort of carp fishing content that you can think of. So all you need is a cell phone. Just do some quick clips yourself at home and we can throw them into these episodes wherever they fit best. That's one of the great things about this series. We can use it to grow the community and just get to know one another a lot better and really highlight Canadian carp angling from our members on the bank or at home just showing their gear, whatever you guys prefer. We really want to keep this series about members and just not the same faces over and over, so we'd really appreciate it if some more members step forward this year just when you get out on the bank. Make whatever videos you can, and yeah, we'd love to share that content. Many thanks to those who put content forward for this episode. We got some pretty neat clips here, and I really enjoyed watching the first edit of this episode, and I'm sure you guys will too. Enjoy.
What a screamer that was.
Welcome to CCSTV.
Best advice for fishing a weed venue: braid mainline, shorts, heavy mono leader, or lead core, depends on how bad the weed is. If you're fishing into weed or on top of it, I'd probably use a light lead core or a leadless leader and a fish chod. If you're fishing onto a clear area, so you're fishing over weed into a clear area, I'd fish a braid mainline, and then I'd fish a heavy mono leader or a fluoro leader if you want. And I would also add some inline tungsten sinkers just before my lead clip, and then I'd wrap those in putty, and that would help pin that line down onto the bottom before you reach your spot that you're fishing. And at that point I would also be fishing lead clip. I'd definitely ditch the lead if I'm fishing in weed, just to get the fish in. Also for the fish's safety, don't want it tangled up in the weed. There's better way and worse ways to deal with the environment. You can drop your leads, which is what I would do. And you can be better than that. You can buy the stones. There's a few brands that make the stones lead, so it's actually a stone, so it just looks like normal bottom debris, I guess, and eject it ultimately. So I would definitely fish lead clip. I'd fish braid mainline, and I'd fish heavy mono or fluoro leaders, depending on if you're going to be actually on the bottom. If you're fishing over the top of weeders, chods, it's the only way you're going to get around that. Ultimately, if you can avoid the weed, avoid it. I know a lot of fish like to patrol those weed beds, particularly in the spring and in the summer, but I try and stay away. If you can get away with not fishing there, then I'll go out of my way to move around.
What is your best advice for spring fishing?
My best advice for spring fishing is don't follow me anywhere. I had a rough go this season. I was way too stubborn this spring, and I thought I had found some warm water, and I was certain there was going to be fish there, and I spent way too much time on this particular body of water, waiting for it to turn on, anticipating it should have turned on. Best advice for spring fishing. I think you gotta find some. I think you gotta find some skinny water, something that you think is going to be warmer than the rest of the water. I don't think you necessarily have to shy away from current, because I think the current can kind of be like a choke point and kind of cut down on which water you have to cover. But I think you got to find some dirty water potentially that'll be a little bit warmer than the rest, and kind of don't be afraid to go shallow, and don't worry about trying to catch huge fish or anything. It's when you're fishing in the spring, I think your measure of success is going to be, you know, banking fish versus not banking fish. You know, whatever, go on Google Maps or whatever, and over time, it might not be something you dial in the first season, but over time, you'll develop kind of a repertoire of swims that are your kind of go-to spots for, like, you know, very early season, late season, sweltering heat, whatever. You'll come up with your own repertoire of swims to rotate through. But definitely in the spring is, you know, the fish are cold-blooded, so you got to figure out where they're gonna be most comfortable and where it's gonna be the warmest, generally speaking.
How about that, eh?
That's a good way to start.
Only goes up from here, I guess.
I guess, eh?
That's funny. Good stuff. About a pound and a half.
Maybe. Hold it up, it's gonna be a good
Will do. Whoop. Yeah, buddy. I'll take it. Hey guys, thanks for joining me today in session here at the spot along the canal. It's about 15 feet of water in front of me. It's a fairly new spot to me, but it's produced some pretty decent fish the last few days. And a rather small 1 pound carp just a few minutes ago. The fight lasted all of 20 seconds. Saved me from the blank though. So my brother Ben is coming later, and hopefully we can smash it up, catch some big carp. We might end up over there, right?
Yep.
PV there. I think that's where we're gonna end up. Woo! I'm sure you can have it. Strong though, that's for damn sure. Very strong. As soon as those clouds came in, eh? Been waiting for them all day. They've been right on the edge. As soon as that sun went behind one. If he goes past that, I'm not risking it. I'm just gonna walk over there. Yeah. It might just do it.
Adam, you might have to net your own fish.
The net over here.
That's you into that line, eh?
Nope.
No, that was my right rod.
Yep.
That was my left rod.
You're on.
I know.
You fly off.
This
Yeah, the back of messing up.
Hopefully that camera's picking up everything.
Oh, it's another adorable one.
Is it net?
Yep, he's in the net.
In your net?
Yeah.
Walked up?
Yeah, he's like,
Really? That's a little one?
That's another adorable one. Yeah, that's awesome.
Goes again. Fairly deep right here because he's diving down. He's not really running out, eh? What? Canal. Yeah, it's not deep, right? That's a job, right? Have you gotten look at them up there? Nervous. One of the biggest fights ever, for sure. All right, absolutely insane. Screaming run, just absolutely took off right into the middle of the canal. I fought him for a good 15 minutes there. That was insane. That was just, I cannot believe that fight. Every time he came in about 10 feet from me, another big screaming run, just absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. I'm gonna get a good look at him here. Oh my
Can I give
goodness.
some water for that?
Yep. Oh, that is a thick, heavy Canadian carp right there. Look at that tail. Just insane. Awesome. Okay.
Got another 25 minutes.
All right, we're gonna take a look at the other side here. He went 21-1 on the scale, and I'm speechless. Couldn't be happier. Absolutely gorgeous fish.
Tired boy.
he goes. Woo! Oh boy. Nice. So this is the first of two, as Adam was fighting his 21 pounder. I caught this almost about 30 seconds after. Came right in, but wet mat's a wet mat. It was a good start to the day. Beats the shift at work I had. And as he was in the retaining sling, and I went back over to help Adam again, the other rod chirped off. He also took a run, went underneath some other fisherman's lines, so we had to untangle while he's on the other end of the line. Chaos. So the rig I'm using here today, very simple. I have a inline paste lead for a pack bait, size 8 ring swivel, 18-pound hook link. It's a dark matter hook link, split shot about an inch above the hook, and it's just a basic hair rig. I'm using, got a hook bait snowman there, yellow cream seed pop-up from Munch Baits, and a Scopex. I don't remember the brand's name. And then got pack bait here. It's just a mix of crushed boilie and breadcrumb, some corn, a couple syrups, whole bunch of attractants in there. I'm gonna pack it on, nice tight ball, and then I just take the hook, stick it into the side of the ball there. That way when it lands on the bottom, my hook bait is right on top of my pile of bait. Nice and easy. Alright guys, so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how we got into carp fishing. We've been fishing all our lives. We'd go up north with the family and fish for walleye and largemouth and anything else that would bite. But for me, it was last spring we went down to the whirlpool, and the amount of big fish swimming around that you see swimming there, I knew I had to catch one. And it took a few weeks, but I finally got one, and I've been hooked on carp ever since, pun intended. And for me, it was honestly the day he caught the, it was a 13 out of the gorge, and I was the one who netted it, and I'd never caught anything over, I think my biggest was a 5-pound largemouth. So seeing something over double the size that I usually catch, I knew I had to start catching it. Just like he said, you can see him swimming around. Why not get them out of the water and take a picture with them, right? It took me a couple extra weeks after netting him, but within 24 hours of my first catch down in I pulled out another. So 2 fish in 24 hours. Both fought harder than anything I've ever caught. I've barely fished for anything else since. Yeah, we don't fish for much else anymore. It's all about the carp. Salmon fishing and trout fishing once or twice. I got a salmon last Halloween. That was probably the only time I've fished for anything other than carp though in the last year. So in terms of gear, last year we were just fishing very basic. We had a T swivel, line down to a sinker, other line over to a size 4 or size 6 hook. Just throw some corn on and throw it out and hope for a bite. The difference this year, we've started using hair rigs and paste or method leads, and the difference is just astronomical. We've upgraded from the little green bells on the rod tips to full bite alarms, receivers and rod pods. Plastic bank sticks to rod pods, as he said too. Yeah, those cheap rod holders that'll break after a couple sessions, we don't have those anymore. And then in terms of carp care gear, we've a couple mats, a couple landing mats, waist slings. We've The carp net was a big one this year. It's got like, what, a 10-foot handle on it.
13-foot handle and a 42-inch opening.
Micro mesh net, perfect for the safety of the fish. Yeah, lots of upgrades from last year. It's,
I caught my first 2 on a terrible salmon combo from Canadian Tire.
oh, yeah.
Come a long way from there. Now using a Daiwa M-Cast and an Okuma with bait runners. Much better than the cheap plastic reel with fluorocarbon that I started on.
I think we've broken 4 reels between me and him and our girlfriends. At least 2 on my end.
I think I've broken 3.
And now the one rod I have a salmon reel. The other one, it's the Daiwa M-Cast, and I love it. No complaints. What a difference it makes.
The peace of mind with the bait runner, it's so much easier than having a crazy loose drag, so they can still take the proper run when they start going.
Is that you or me?
That's me.
No.
Sorry, I thought I saw my rock.
So I got a false alarm there, just a big whack on my one rod, but no fish. But yeah, in terms of gear for next year, I definitely need my own net. The net that we're using is his. And I want to get one of the, a cradle, either like an inflatable crib that goes right on the ground or a cradle. And I need actual carp rods, because right now I'm fishing with 2 7-footers. One's a medium heavy and one's a medium, and they do the trick, but I could definitely use some bigger, stronger rods.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
For me, I would like to upgrade my one rod. It's lower end salmon rod. I'm looking at getting a legit 10-footer for carp. You can make the difference having that extra, well, first the extra 2 feet and then the extra backbone. Just much more control, makes it a lot easier. And yeah, I kind of want that rod gone. And then I'm looking at getting a second net, that way I can have a net per rod that's in the water at all times, instead of having to panic when I get one fish on the mat to get the net back together.
Could probably do with a spod rod as well.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Spods and bait scoops for sure.
Yeah, we don't have any of that.
We're just using slingshots right now.
Slingshot and the pitcher arm. Okay, so thank you for joining us on our session here today along the canal. After that flurry of bites, things really slowed down. A couple whacks on the line, but no more runs, no more fish. So I think we're just going to sit back and cook up some of these sausages and call it a night. If we get another fish, awesome. If not, today was a success. And I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.
Absolutely.
Hey everyone, it's Galen here from the CCS, and I just wanted to share with you one of my favorite captures that I've had, and it's probably the most rewarding capture that I've had to the date. So I'll start you off. It was this spring. I was getting ready to fish the spring CCS SSF, and as you know, I like to do a lot of underwater footage, and for about a week or two prior to the SSF, I did a lot of baiting and a lot of filming just to see what fish were in my swim. I really wanted to know the quality of fish that I was trying to target, and I ended up having a nice school of fish move in, and they were quite large. And after about, I don't know, a week and a half, they moved off and another school moved in. Now there was a number of smaller fish plus one really big one that I kept having come in on my camera, but it was pretty shy of my bait pile where my bait was, but I could still see where it was comfortably feeding, and had a pretty good idea of where I needed to put my bait in order to try and at least get a hook bait in front of this fish. So it was huge information and a huge edge for me to figure out roughly where the comfort zone of this fish feeding was, because it had clearly been caught before, or at least it had experience with anglers and corn, and at least that's my interpretation of kind of how this fish was approaching this bait. So I was able to review my film before the SSF, and the Saturday that the SSF started, I set up and I placed my bait where I thought this fish would be patrolling if it decided to show up. And sure enough, after about it's probably about half an hour to an hour, I get this run, and all I felt was weight and the fish swimming. So you knew it was a decent sized fish. And what ended up happening was I actually got this fish in relatively quickly, and I had got it close to the net, realizing it was quite large, and I was just shaking. It was quite an exhilarating experience, and especially during a tournament setting, that's exactly what you want to see on the end of your line. So taking my time and having confidence in my gear, I had recently switched to mono that season, and I was fairly confident that I wasn't going to get a hook pull, because I really enjoy the stretch in the line and having that almost as like a safety net, because it can handle that those runs and during the fight. And so I ended up landing this fish, and it ended up being a 33 pound or just over 33 pound common. And I had previously been looking at the film, and I noticed its tail had a bit of a silhouette, like a half moon. So I named this fish the half moon common. So I landed this fish, and this fish skyrocketed me to the top of the leaderboard, and then I managed to catch, I think, another 5 after that, which looking back at the film and my photos, a number of those fish I had actually filmed prior and I'd actually caught, so it was really cool to see. Now what makes this extra special is later that week during the SSF tournament, I was fishing a night session, and I had noticed on the second day of the SSF, when I had been out fishing and doing some filming, I had been filming for most of the most of the time, and the fish had just moved off. So I assumed, based on a bit of current change and just the behavior of the fish and them not being there, they'd probably moved. And there's a nice structure downstream that they will hang out around in. I've done really well. So I moved downstream and started to do some night sessions. And wouldn't you know it, out of the blue, I had a method ball or pack bait around rock lead and just a standard corn stack, and I had casted that off away from my main bait pile, off to the left and upstream of where I was actually fishing. It happened to be my third rod actually, which is a huge advantage since they've changed that rule change, or made that rule change. So all of a sudden that rod just absolutely tore off, and I had a heck of a time getting this fish in. It just would not give up. I kept getting it close, and it would just run and come close and then run back out. And as this was going on, of course, one of my other rods goes off. So I'm desperately trying to get this fish in the net, knowing it was a big fish, without getting spooled on my other reel. Luckily, I got big pit reels, so I've got a lot of line, so I knew I had some time. And sure enough, I got this fish in the net, and what do you know? It was at 33 again. She is again. Half moon common. Okay, let's get her back. The half moon common, and that just meant the world to me, because I knew I had a really good chance at winning this SSF. Even though it was only partway through the week, I had a pretty good lead on most of the other anglers, and I was so elated, so happy, and every time I see that photo I have a smile on my face, because it was a well-earned fish. I worked my butt off trying to put myself in the best position possible, and reviewing the film, and everything just came together. So that's my story of the half moon common, and one of my most favorite captures. Thank you very much.
Hey guys, Sean Martin here. Give you a quick look at my favorite rig and setup. My trusty German. Arguably the most versatile rig one could tie, and probably the simplest. You could probably whip up half a dozen of these in a matter of minutes. Quick polymer knot, a couple hook stops and some bait screws. Always run an inline setup, usually running 6 to 8 inches hook length. Got a good stiff anti-tangle sleeve on there just to keep that out there. Yeah, usually running about a 2-ounce square pair inline setup. Quick, easy setup to tie with the quick change swivel on there. Big advantage of the German, I run personally kind of a modified. I use a double hook stop, which which kind of acts like a slip D combo as well. You can push both those right down to the eye and give yourself kind of a choddy, depending on the venue, of course, and your bottom. Just adjust your split shot and you got yourself a choddy. Or you can just go with the single hook stop. Give yourself a traditional German. Bottom lip, perfect hook sets every time. Can't go wrong. Great versatile rig, no matter the venue, no matter the bottom, no matter the time of year. I run this 95% of the time. Give it a try. I guarantee you'll like the results.
My worst bankside accident. You know, truth be told, I'm a pretty careful carp angler. I don't tend to fish a lot of locations that are precarious. You know, call me a weenie, but I also don't think it's worth life or limb sometimes to catch a fish. So I'll try to find locations that are a little more favorable in terms of like having not so sketchy conditions in terms of where I'm going to be standing, netting, you know, landing fish, etc. Loose rocks and such, that's not my vibe. Louie. Ooh, I was really bad with that cough, wasn't it? That's okay. He won't mind. So in terms of like slips and falls, like, yeah, I've had my few, but nothing that really left me with anything more than a bruised pride. But I do have, and you'll probably barely be able to see it, but it's right here. I do have a scar on the right palm. And that takes me back to 2015, to what I would consider to be my worst accident, my biggest boo-boo. What happened was I was fishing. In 2015, I discovered this new spot, and I was completely obsessed with it. There was a lot of really good fish to be had there, and for those of you who already know what I'm talking about, but I went there, and that whole summer, spring into summer, I was fishing that spot, and it was almost every weekend I was doing an overnight, and I was having a lot of success. And I watched as it slowly went from being very, very productive to not so productive. And it was a night that it was not so productive that this happened, and there was a big sort of low pressure system that had pushed in, and it went dead quiet until about 2 o'clock in the morning. And I started getting some fish that were crashing on top of me, and I was feeling confident that something was going to happen, and I was right. And I had 2 fish back to back in half an hour, and the first one was beautiful. It was a mid-20, and I felt really chuffed to bits. I was really feeling that confidence. Got the rig right back out on the spot again. Rod ripped off like within 30 minutes, like I said. And picked up that rod and started fighting, and that one just went completely ballistic. The first one was like a union bull. Now, if you've watched bull riding, you'll know what I mean by a union bull. It hears the bell, hears the horn, and it just walks off. Well, this one kind of, as soon as it figured out it had lost, it went in the net, got up, took pictures, was a perfect specimen for taking photos with. It didn't really put up much of a fight on the mat. This second fish, however, was nothing short of an arsehole. I'm sure that'll be bleeped out. And this fish ended up breaking my net. So it was fighting really hard out there for some time. And I play my fish out usually because I don't want them being green when they go in the net. I don't want them green. That's a dangerous sentiment, especially when they get on the mat being green as well, when you don't have a nice cradle like I have now, you're just running a flat mat. So I fought that fish out and put it in the net, and it went ballistic in the net, right? And my net handle snapped. So it snapped right at the spreader block, and needless to say, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, sleep deprived, now my net's broken. That's 2 strikes. I'm a little bit pissed. And so I get the fish up on the mat. I'm a little bit, unsettled, we'll say. I'm miffed. And I get it out of the net. So you're just peeling the net back away from its body, and all of a sudden it goes nuts again. And this time it flashed up its dorsal spine. Now I truly understand the morphology of carp. And that top dorsal spine, for those of you who maybe aren't aware of this, is serrated. So oftentimes it's covered by the actual membrane there, that skin that creates that perfect rayed fin. But in this particular case, this had a split in it, right? It was split right at that first dorsal, that first spine of the dorsal. And so I had my hand over that, and he lifted it up, and he drove his dorsal spine right into my palm and was still thrashing violently. And it was at that moment I was like, that's the feeling of something sawing into my muscle tissue. And I looked in, and I could actually see, like, I pulled my hand away, obviously, and then I looked, and I could just see I could see a lot of stuff in there that you're not supposed to see. That's supposed to be hidden. So that hurt like hell. But I got the picture up of the fish, and I'll put up the picture now. You can't see the blood because it's running down the inside of the sleeve of my jacket. So there's no blood on camera, but you could see how not pleased I am with that fish. I'm not happy. And I looked at that gaping wound after I released that fish, and it was like, ooh, and I wrapped it up with a towel. And, you know, in hindsight, I probably should have had a first aid kit on me. Now I don't leave, you know, I have one in my car at all times. I have a first aid kit because these kinds of things happen. But of course, I'm tired, my net's broken, I'm grumpy. So what do? I go home, I put in an order to carp kit, I go to sleep. I didn't think to clean this properly. You know, I had a bandage wrapped around it, but I didn't really give it the time of day to really get in there and clean it out. And it got infected, and infected it badly enough that my hand swelled up quite disgustingly. And I was able to, at some point, squeeze pus out of that hole. So yeah, not exactly the most pleasant experience. And it even held me up from fishing for about a week to, like, I think it was like almost 10 days. I couldn't actually hold a fishing rod because my hand was just so swollen and sore. So hindsight's 2020. You know, I now I know that I have to be calm, because I'm sure that fish sensed that, you know, I wasn't in the best of states, right? And, you know, now remembering, you know, to keep a first aid kit on me at all times, and a spare net, you know. So that's my worst bankside accident. I'm usually a pretty careful fella, but, you know, I've got a mark to remember one particular fish by, just because I let my guard down.
All kinds of doodads hanging there, don't you?
I do. My counters, my last good day I had, 10 fish.
It's not bad.
I lose track after 4 or 5.
Well, Reg, I appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us for a bit, have a nice little chat in this horrendously cold and windy day.
Who in their right mind would fish on a day like today?
You.
Well, no one said that carp fishermen aren't right-minded, but
It's tough though, isn't it? When you got the chance to get out, it's hard not to take that opportunity, right?
well, absolutely. You know, at this time of year, I'm always afraid that this is going to be my last day out.
Well, Reg, since we've got the chance to talk and sit down with you and pick your brain a little bit, why don't we first go back a little ways? You know, you're a multi-species angler, always have been, probably always will be. So you've fished a lot of different waters, and you've spent time in a lot of different places doing different things, learning as much as possible. But I'm curious, because, you know, you've been around a while. When did carp first get on your radar? Like, when did you really start after carp?
One of my earliest memories is going fishing with my dad, and someone had a carp on a stringer, and it was the biggest fish I had ever seen. And from there on in, I said to myself, I want one of them. And, well, that always stayed at the back of my mind. When we were kids again, fishing with my dad, these big fish would jump. My dad would say, those are carp. They're bottom feeders. They're no good to eat. We don't want those. But deep down inside, I wanted one. They were the biggest fish around. So then my dad started taking us to the river, and when we didn't have worms, we'd bring corn. We would catch catfish on corn, And then we would get some big fish on that would snap our lines all the time. And we fantasized that they must have been muskie or sturgeon. But meanwhile, they were carp. Not that we knew then, but after losing a couple fishing rods, we knew something was up. So then we got some better reels. Dad showed us how to work the drag, and we started landing some carp. Now, they might have been 5-10 pounds, but they were the biggest fish we had ever caught.
Yeah.
So that always stayed with me. Whenever I wanted big fish, I knew if I got a can of corn and I went to the sanitation plant in the Welland River where they dumped all their sewage, I would catch carp and catfish. And that's how I learned how to catch big fish, how to fight big fish.
It's interesting.
I can't get enough of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people I've spoken to over the years, and myself included, we kind of utilized our ability to fish for carp to help train us for other species that we were targeting, like salmon and trout and such.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like you did the exact same thing years before any of us did.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, how do you feel being a multi-species angler, having the opportunity to fish different waters and try different things? How do you feel that has improved or impacted your ability to consistently catch carp?
Well, it's like any fishing I've gotten into. I've jumped in with both feet, over my head sometimes, obsessed, and everything I learned to catch other species, I would catch carp incidentally while I was catching these other species. I would catch carp on rubber worms while fishing for bass. I would catch carp on floating rapalas at night while fishing for walleye. I would catch carp in the Niagara River while fishing for salmon with a flutter spoon or frozen smelt on a bobber. Well, it seemed like no matter what I did, the carp always showed up. Now, they were incidental catches, accidental catches, but what really got me going is that when I really wanted to catch a carp, it wasn't that easy.
Interesting.
And that's when I figured I got to get educated to find out how I can catch carp more consistently instead of just incidentally.
So, when did that epiphany happen? Like, when did you realize that you wanted to just know everything you could about this style of carp fishing, where you could target them specifically?
Well, when I got to a point where I felt like I've learned about as much as I could about all the other species I fish for, carp was the only one that I never mastered. Carp was the only one that always kept me fascinated. And I'd say once all the other fishing burnt me out, all that was left was the next frontier. Carp fishing. I bought books, I read them up, it all sounded foreign to me, and then one day I did meet a carp fisherman, my first real carp fisherman, Warren Morley, the Canadian representative for the CAG. He showed me how to tie a hair rig. I seen his fishing rods. I seen his rod pods, his alarms. I thought, wow, I can catch carp. I don't need all that. So I improvised for years. And I started catching more carp. And then I started getting more carp equipment. And one thing led to another. And already it's been 15, 20 years with this obsession. And that's all I want to do now. Not that I don't like all the other fishery we've done. We live in the best fishing area in North America.
Absolutely.
Cold water fish, warm water fish, all trophy. trout, salmon, walleye, bass, muskie, pike, you name it, we got it all. But this is what I prefer at this stage in my life, the relaxation, peace and quiet. Can't get enough of it. And, you know, for years, I sort of fished carp in place of salmon because it was the biggest fish I can catch besides salmon. Well, now it's the biggest fish I've caught.
Yeah.
I haven't caught salmon close to 40 pounds, but I've caught carp close to 40 pounds.
Yeah, you've had a few of them just this month, actually.
I've been lucky. I'm blessed.
Yeah, you've
But it's like my wife always says, anybody that puts in as much time fishing as I do better catch a lot of fish or there's something wrong.
Yeah, you've been on a good run this recently,
I have.
that's for sure.
I have. I'm blessed.
Now, you touched on two things there that I'd like to go back to a bit. First of all, the person you met, Lauren Morley, who's passed on now a few years ago, but he's somebody that had an impact on carp fishing in our region specifically, but also Southern Ontario overall. I never shared the bank with him myself. I know a lot of people that did and spoke highly of him. When you encountered him in that particular chance meeting, did you have any idea that there was, as small as it was at that point, that there was a small carp community in the region?
I had heard rumors that there were people fishing carp in the Hamilton Harbor. That was some of the first carp fishing that I had heard of. I think it was an old article in Ontario Out of Doors from Lonnie King.
Okay, yep.
And he had fish with, I forget his name now, but anyway, that was some of the earliest carp fishing I had heard of. And like I said, around that time I met Lauren Morley. He gave me a subscription form for the CAG, about a 3-year membership. The rest is history.
Yeah, so I think if my memory serves right, because I was kind of in the same boat where you were around the same time, and this is basically mid-90s at this point, would you say?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting when I look back, and when you and I, the few times we've shared the bank, we seem to have the exact same stories from the exact same places with a difference of just a few years in between them, and that's about it.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of special how we've kind of come into the carp fishing the same way, in the same places, thinking that, oh yeah, I've got this great spot, and then we always seem to just miss each other on these spots over the years until this year.
Exactly.
And then just by chance we bump into each other at this spot today.
Again, so it must have been meant to be.
Must have been, absolutely. So now you're at a stage where you've recognized that there is this rumored small carp community. You've met a few carp anglers at this point. You've started getting some of the equipment. But one of the other things you touched on is that you started to innovate a little bit. Now, right behind me, with 2 rods sitting on it, there's an innovation of yours that I can speak of right now, and that's your homemade rod pod.
My homemade rod pod.
That you're still using to this day.
I liked them so much I made a dozen of them.
How much of that innovation did you do? Because I know a lot of that stems from your other species fishing, making lures, stuff like that, making rods, whatnot. How much of that really gave you an edge in your carp fishing to step up your game just by making the things you needed?
Oh, big time. Big time. Some of my early carp rods were my old salmon rods. Now, noodle rods didn't cut it because they were too flimsy, but our downrigger rods were perfect. And then we didn't have alarms, so we did prop them up on sticks, and we used a bait cast reel with the clicker on free spool. So now when we had a run, the reel sounded with the free spool clicker, and we engaged and the fight was on. And from there, well, I tried all kinds of salmon steelhead rods. We did make them work. We made some of our own bobbins.
Yep.
Like I said, for a long time I was in denial. I said, oh, I don't need all that fancy carp equipment. I can innovate my own stuff and I can still catch carp. And I did for years, but slowly I saw an alarm once at a tackle shop. Oh, it's only 30 bucks. I'll try one. Well, now I needed a pod to put on that the bank stick and the alarm on, so I made a pod. It's like the old saying goes, the better the tradesman, the better the tools. We didn't have much carp supply places years ago in the area either.
Yeah.
There was Fishing World in Hamilton, there was Bill's Baits in Hamilton. That was about it.
A little bit at Peter's Tackle slowly trickled in.
Exactly. That was about it. And like I said, we made up the rest. We bullshit the rest. You know what they say, if you pretend you know what you're doing, people think you do. Well, that's how we've learned.
Now, you know, it's interesting to look back and see the similarities, at least to the carp anglers in our region. We all kind of got into it the same way or through the same people, in all the same places, which it's interesting. Can you think back to when you caught your first, what you considered a monster, so maybe your first 30 pounder from the area? What was that moment like?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. You know, years ago, 20, 25 pounder, they all looked like 30 pounders.
Yeah.
We didn't really weigh them, they just looked it. Now, when it was the actual true 30 pound plus, I still think that was during my early days of fishing with my steelhead equipment, and I knew a couple spots where I could go during the pre-spawn, and sure enough there was a lot of fish there, and your average fish might have been 15 to 20 pounds, and then there were the ones that looked bigger, so we called them 25 pounders, and then there was the odd one that dwarfed them. So those were the 30s. But I never took any out of the water. I never weighed any. I just called them big fish and I just let them go. When did I actually weigh one?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think.
It's hard to look back on some of that when you've had, if you want to call it, say, a fishing career, you've caught more than the average angler's share of fish over the years, so it's hard to probably pinpoint some of those captures.
And I just started weighing the odd carp the last maybe 4 or 5 years. Before that, I would never weigh them. I would never take them out of the water. I would just call them big, happy with that, and move on. Next.
Interesting. There's probably a lot of people thinking, Jesus, he's probably had 40 pounders that he just called big and let go. And
I might have, and I'm good with that.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
It's more about the experience than the prize, isn't it?
That's it. Absolutely.
As we move kind of closer to nowadays, you know, yes, you're still using some of your homemade gear. You've started using some more specialized carp equipment. I want to touch on something that's a little bit sensitive based on the fact that it's kind of happened recently, but we'll just use this as an example. You know, anglers like myself and Kevin and other people that fish around this area, as I said, we kind of did the same thing that you did, but just a few years behind. What was it like for you when you started noticing some of us in those same spots You know, before you knew who we are, you know, to you, they were just people in your spots. What was that like for you?
It was a shock. It was a shock. I was really intimidated by it. I thought I was going to lose all my spots, which weren't really my spots, but that's just the way I felt. I didn't handle it well up until this year. I decided to let all that go, and now I belong to a carp fishing club, society, and I've met more carp fishermen this year, good carp fishermen, than I've met in the last 20 years of carp fishing.
Wow.
I've met more this year than ever. And now I don't feel as intimidated because I've met some really good guys, like-minded guys, and who knows what the future holds. I've learned so much this year just by fishing with these guys, socializing with these guys. The sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. I can't get enough of it.
Awesome. Yeah, looking back, even just going back, say about 4 years ago, it was interesting that we would be fishing in spots that we literally called the secret spots that we had scoped out for years and never saw anybody else ever fishing there. And then all of a sudden, there was this one vehicle that just kept appearing. And there's this lone angler that would pop out of that vehicle and set up, never right where we were, but always very close. Never spoke to us, we never spoke to him, and it was interesting that at the time we didn't know who you were, we didn't know what was going on, that you had been here for decades fishing this area. So out of paranoia, which I'm sure you've experienced, we simply thought that this was somebody that kind of got onto what we were doing and was following us around. Now we find out that you had the same thoughts from your end. And it's difficult as this community grows, this society grows. We're finding that we're experiencing this a lot more, some in good ways, some in less than good ways. But in your opinion, as things move forward with the growth of this carp community, not just in our area, but in Canada overall, do you see the fishing getting better or getting more difficult? What are your thoughts there?
I can only see it getting better because, like I was saying, I think we're all learning from each other, whether we want to admit it or not. And it's just like all the rest of the fishing I've done all my life. I've done it by observing other fishermen. Whether they knew what they were doing or not, I would catch on to what they were doing. And I applied it. And then it evolved into whatever else I did. But I think all fishermen have an eye on what's going on. And they've got a way of putting it together to suit themselves specifically. And the whole community should be a learning process. See, I was lucky years ago. I fished with a bunch of guys in the Niagara River 35 years ago. We called ourselves the River Rats. We were about 6-8 guys, hardcore, obsessed salmon trout fishermen. And we put that puzzle together in the Niagara River since the late 70s, early 80s, where there was millions of fish, but no one really knew how to catch them. And one guy would try this, another guy would try that. He would hit. We would all try what he was doing. And then someone else would put a little twist to it. Now we were all hitting what he was using. And that's how it all evolved, and we did learn from each other. And that's something that stuck with me all through the years, is learning from each other. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not copying, you're not infringing on someone else. it should be a community kind of thing where we all help each other out. And in the past with the river rats, if one guy was in a certain area and he was hitting on a certain bait, after 4 or 5 fish, we didn't like the glory of just one person doing it. We would move on, tell another partner to move in, take my lure, and see if it makes a difference. And then if he would start hitting fish, well, now we knew we were onto something. We're onto a new area, a new bait, and it's benefited all of us. And that's the way my fishing has always gone. I never liked to be the guy that was the center of attention or catching them all. I never liked that. It always felt uncomfortable because I had some really good friends with me and I wanted them to experience it too. And that's when I would back off, give them everything I could, and when they would hit fish too, that made me happy. Mission accomplished. Time to move on.
Excellent. Yeah, when you can work with a group of people that you're tight with and that all share that same mindset.
That's special. That's very special. You can't do that with just anybody. And a lot of times you meet people and, you know, you only have one chance at a first impression, and some people click and some people don't. But, you know, as I've gotten older through the years, I try not judging people. And now I'm trying to be more open. I've always been a lone wolf, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
But now I'm more open than ever. And I've met more good fishermen than ever. And I want to keep that up.
Excellent. Let's look at kind of today as an interesting scenario. We're out here, cold, wet, mid-November. Fools satisfying an obsession. You know, it's one thing to catch when the weather's right. It's another thing to be out when conditions are not favorable. But we're still out here. You've got 2 lines in right now. Do you see the community growing in a way that we're going to see more people braving the elements and putting in that harder effort? Or do you think more people are going to stick to being that fair weather kind of angler?
Well, no matter what kind of fishing, you have the fair weather fishermen, and you have the ones that just don't want to give up. They just don't want to admit the season is over. One last cast, one last try, can blank half a dozen times, but then if you get that one special fish after that, it means more than a dozen fish during ideal conditions. Just the work that you put in, you should get satisfaction from it. And like I've always said, when I have a good day, I learn something. When I have a bad day and I blank, I learn even more. And the more blank days that I put in, the more I learn. And someday, the blank days are going to be fewer and further apart.
It's really good advice there. With that said, if you were to, well, I would say if you were to, but you kind of are right now, just given our conversation. For the anglers that are relatively new to carp fishing, or have been doing it a while but are now new to the social aspect of it, of being part of a community, what advice would a seasoned angler such as yourself offer to those out there that are a little bit shy of getting involved with the community, or not necessarily sharing locations or ideas, because that's a tricky discussion in itself, but for those people that have not had the benefit of sharing an interaction with another angler that's like-minded, what advice would you offer them?
You got to put yourself out there. You've got to walk up to those people and introduce yourself to them. And you've got to move on. You know, like my wife always said, you got to put yourself out there if you're going to socialize. If you're going to do all the lone wolf kind of thing and you're always going to hide in spots and not want to talk to anybody, well, that's the way you're going to be for the rest of your life. But if you put yourself out there and you do socialize with some people and introduce yourself, you know, like I said, this year has been an eye-opener for me of actually doing that, putting myself out there, socializing with different people. I can't get enough of it now. So now I'm trying to get rid of all the old stigmas that I had about feeling intimidated and not wanting to share my spots and my techniques. It's not all mine. Hey, and I'm 66 years old. I know I got a lot to share. And I haven't got that much time left to do it. So if I'm going to get it right, this is the time to do it.
It's quite the statement. Definitely has an impact. And hopefully people take your advice.
You know, I think of that more and more at my age. You know, because my days are numbered. And I've learned a lot through the years. Why not share it with people that could appreciate it? Now, I do have a problem with bragging and advertising, and I would never want to be that guy that does the bragging, does the advertising, but sharing isn't all about that. It's about giving a little piece of yourself to someone that could appreciate it. You know, to someone that could use it. And like I said all the way through the years, sometimes I get just as much satisfaction seeing someone else catching fish that I mentored. I get a lot of satisfaction doing that, and I wish I would have done more of it, but the day's still young.
I really do appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, Reg. Very easily could just keep doing this for several more hours. But you've got 2 lines in. I don't. And the weather's turning a little bit worse on us. Do you think we still have a chance?
I still think so. Absolutely. We always do.
Well, why don't we wrap up this conversation with one final question? Do you have anything to say to the carp community as a whole that you think they might benefit from, as far as, you know, you've already said so much. Is there one thing that you could say right now that you feel that everyone could benefit from with what they're getting out of this conversation?
Get in anytime you can. The more time you spend on the bank, the more you're going to learn, the more you're going to catch.
Awesome.
It doesn't get any better than this. I'm living a dream. I hope everybody else can take part of that dream.
Awesome. Thanks, Reg.
Pleasure was all mine.
My most memorable lost fish while carp fishing. That is easy. There was a lot of great things about that particular session. This was during the very first Canada Carp Cup back in 2017, fishing in Long Sault on the St. Lawrence. My teammate and I were in a swim that was known for big fish, and even though we were blanking really bad the first day of the tournament, we had a bridge nearby, and we were able to go up and get this high vantage point looking down into the water. And that kind of the end of that first day, I saw the biggest carp I had ever seen swimming. It honestly, looking down at it, it looked like a wine barrel with fins. It was massive, absolutely huge. And that fish came up through the current and went right by my line as if my line wasn't even there. And I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And all we could hope for was that we would get a fish like that during the tournament.
fast forward to the last morning, so I guess this was day 3. The last morning, damn phone. It was relatively early. We were getting into fish at this point pretty consistently, and we had a good number of big fish on our tally, and we were quite happy with how we were sitting. We were thinking that we were definitely going to be in the top 3. And I had this run. At this point, we were fishing kind of over the current into this big bay across from us, into some shallower water that we had fed heavily with boilies, and we were catching on it each night very, very well. And this particular morning, I hooked a fish, and it had this big swell, and it felt heavy right away, and I was just stunned, because it was just like, holy crap, this fish is big, and it took off. And anybody who knows the bay by that middle bridge, it's quite a ways out to get out to the main river, and this fish was heading in that direction. It was heading for the main river, and I could do nothing to stop it. It was just peeling line and peeling line and peeling line, and I was looking on the far bank way out at the point, and there was this one kind of like half-dead birch tree, and I could just see my line lifting in the water, heading right towards that birch tree on the far side. And I was just so worried that I wasn't going to be able to turn this fish around, and it was just going to go and go and go and spool me. It didn't. I was able to get it to slow a bit, and I just started to pull a little bit of line back, and thinking, okay, if I can get a little bit of line here and he takes some, we can do a little bit of back and forth, and maybe, just maybe, I'll get this fish in. I don't think to that point I had ever fought a fish that felt that powerful, and I've landed 30-pound salmon, in the lake, in the rivers at spawning time, and I've landed some big fish in my day that were really strong, and this one, bar none, was a challenge that I was not prepared for. And this fish was fighting and fighting and fighting, and all I could think about in my head was, do I have a fish like the one I saw from the bridge? Do I have that wine barrel on the end of my line? So it just kept going through my head. And as I started to feel like I was going to be able to turn this fish and start to come back, it took another run, and I could just feel a little bit of a quick jerk, as it must have done a head shake or really kicked a little bit more, and the hook came out. And I cranked in what seemed like 110, 120 yards of line back, and I was only fishing 30 yards out, so it tells you just how far this fish had made it. But yeah, that unfortunately I lost that fish. I didn't get to see it. Having felt the fish that we caught through that weekend, and we caught some really good fish, a lot of high 20s, and luckily enough I was blessed to catch the biggest fish of the tournament that particular season, or that year, a 32-pounder, 32.11. None of those fish fought anywhere near or felt anywhere near as powerful as the one that I lost. So I can't help but think that maybe I hooked the fish of a lifetime and lost it. And that will stay with me forever. I will never get over that. That's difficult to recall, but yeah, that's definitely my most memorable loss. I won't forget that one, ever. I'm sad now.
Don't beat yourself up.
What's my best advice for spring fishing? Well, if I had to say one thing, I'd say invest in a thermometer. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be a deeper sonar that registers temperature. It can be from the dollar store. It could be a pool thermometer. But check water temperatures and record water temperatures, because it's my belief that it doesn't matter what time of year or whatnot, water temperatures trigger fish activity. And yes, you can catch a carp through the ice, and yes, you can catch carp in the winter, but when things start to warm up and the spring comes, you want to look for warmer water. Easiest way to do that, a thermometer. If you're going to fish a big lake, like let's say one of the Great Lakes, Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, look for shallow water. Look for a bay. Look for dirty water. But don't rule out creeks or small rivers with muddy water, because the stained water will warm up quicker in the sun than clear water. So in the spring, invest in a thermometer, record, and make notes. It's one of the best tools in your arsenal.
Hey guys, Nathan here, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We're taking a look inside my rig box. I thought this would be a little neat, engaging way over the winter for us to do some videos, get some more content out there. And it's one thing I'm curious about, just what other anglers use in their tackle boxes, what they think is essential. And yeah, we'll just take a quick look here at my tackle box. It's going to be a bit messy because it's been a busy season. Haven't had much time to tidy it up and just starting to sort everything away here for the winter. I think my season's pretty much done. I might get out one or two more times, but I'm gonna clean the tackle box up here. I'll go by it piece by piece and just show you guys what's inside my tackle box. Okay, so we're zoomed out here. Hopefully this is set up good enough so you guys can see, but there we go. Got nice stickers on the front here. Essentials. I don't have any 30 plus or 40 plus stickers yet. Hopefully that'll come next year. And yeah, as you can see, it's a little bit messy from this season, but let's go by it piece by piece here. If you've seen my other video that I put out in the rig section, I switched to the spinner rigs this year. They worked quite effectively for me. So most of these, I think pretty much all the rigs in here now are spinner rigs, adjusted with some bait screws. And yeah, if you want to see why I use those, go check out that video, but got a bunch of those in here. And the majority of the time I just weigh it down with a little brown split shot weight on those. So I got a bunch of those in here, and I also have a bit of putty when I do use putty, but most of the spots I fish are really silty, and I find those brown split shots, it just sinks right into the silt when I'm fishing. So it's just the hook and the bait showing. But what else we got here? Got some Ridge Monkey braid cutters. They're all right. Pretty much when you look at all the different brands of braid cutters or line cutters out there, they all look basically the same, just different name. These ones are glow in the dark. Is it worth the extra money? I don't know. You can get a cheap dollar store pair that work just as well, but those are the ones I have. I did switch to crimping this year, so I got the quarter crimp tool, fits nicely in this tackle box. And then I have both sizes of the boom section, because when I picked up the crimps in the crimp tool, it comes with a multi-pack of crimps of both sizes. So I used up all the one size that fits the 35 pounds, so then I picked up some 25 pound to use the other ones. And then I became such a big fan of that, I went and I picked up the small crimps and the large crimps. So I have all the crimping stuff this year. For what it is, it's not that expensive to pick up all that stuff and get into it, and I thoroughly enjoy it a lot more than tying all the knots and everything. So these are new this year. The quarter weights just make everything look nice and tidy, aside from the split shots and the tungsten putty. I haven't really used them all that much yet, but going to test those out in the future. A Gardner Feature Finder lead. This thing casts long distance, sinks nice and quick, and get pretty good feedback from that. I thought it just looked cool, so I used those ones. And then this year, normally I use the inline leads, but this year I switched to just leg clip systems. I don't drop the lead. I make sure it's on there nice and tight with the rubber sleeve, so I don't drop them unless I get snagged up really bad. They do come off. I think I only lost one lead this year, but dropping leads in our Canadian waters, I'm not a fan of that, so I make sure they stay on there tight. I switched to the swivel style instead of the inline leads, just for when I'm transporting my rods. I didn't want that inline lead bouncing around. This is a lot easier. You can just pop it right off the clip and good to go for transport. A lot quicker, easier, not damaging your rods or anything with those other inline leads. So that's why I've made that switch to those. And then up here in the top, I have some silicone sleeves just for quick adjustments, and then I use the Corda leg clip system. So there it is there. The lead just clips on there. The rubber sleeve slides down over top to hold it on. I got a bunch of those in there. This side, I have my split shots, and then my crimps and other weights go in there. Have some rubber shock beads whenever I do use those. Then the compartments over here, we got hair stops. Haven't used many of those because I've been using the spinner rigs with bait screws, but when I do use a hair rig, there's my bait stops. In here I just have some bait screws, other swivels, and quick connects down here. Lots of quick connects and different type swivels for tying up the spinner rigs now. In this side over here, I have more shock beads, line beads, back leads for when I need to use back leads. A lot of boat traffic where I fish, so I have to pin the line down. Up here, more back leads, more rubber beads, hook stops, more swivels. And then this top compartment just has some little silicone sleeves for keeping my quick change swivels on. Now, down here, these are the pre-made spinner hook sections I bought and used this year. I used all my number 6 ones pretty much for most of the year. Then I had a pack of number 4s just to test out. I do prefer the number 6s. But next year, I'll probably just tie my own since I have all the components to make those. Next year, I'll make some of them in the spring. I'll be good to go for the year. Just other things. This is the Hobo Armor, just the bead system for setting up rigs and stuff. I haven't really used too many of those. These are just little tidy tungsten sinkers that act the same as like a split shot or your dark matter. Tested those out. Didn't really use them all that much. Just a tidy way of making rigs. But it's a lot easier just to stick a split shot or the putty on there. Now, I did get some of the ESP double corn, so that's just all over the place in here. It's kind of messy from my season this year, but I do have other hook link materials that I used to tie my hair rigs with. I still use this on occasion too. This is the stiff hook length in weed green. This is some of my favorite stuff, soft end trap for the supple hair rigs I used to tie, 30 pound. Also have some of the stiff Corda hybrid hook length. There's another one there, the coated. Some marker elastic. I only use this when I fish tournaments and want to be really accurate. I just mark up my lines to where I'm fishing. If you're fishing at a certain peg, you know what spots you're casting to. This just makes it really easy at nighttime to mark out the length on marker sticks and cast accurately. This is my PB Products stripper tool and knot puller. It's a really nice one. I like this one above all others. Just handy. You can get a lot of torque on that to tighten your knots. Handy, it has a little stripper feature here for your coated braid on the bottom. Hook sharpening. Now these are just old stones my dad used to have in his tackle box. I transferred them over to mine. I use them a lot they're kind of more, this one's a really coarse one, so just really grinding it down, then a super fine one to take all the burrs off. And then this is pretty neat. This is the Gardner one. And the way Gardner shows to use it is just like a really fine sharpening stone, but I find it's a lot like the other blocks. What are they called? The GOM, I think it is. PB Products makes one, and I find it gets it really sharp if you take your hook point after a few casts. Once it gets dull, you just stick it in and then wiggle it back and forth till it pops out. And that's just super sharp. That's all you really need to do. You don't really have to sharpen it down at all. So neat little trick for those. It's almost like a rubbery material with, I don't know, diamond flex or something in it. Just any which way, just poke your hook in there. I just wiggle it back and forth and just takes a few seconds. I usually end up carrying that in my pocket when I'm on the bank. I just store it in here afterwards. And pretty much every cast, just sharpen those hook points razor sharp, because I find that does help with hookup rates. But those are interesting little kind of rubbery blocks. Bait needles. Just all sorts of different baiting needles for when I do use a hair rig or have to splice or anything. I believe this is the Free Spirit set I have. Just doesn't matter what set you have, they all do the same thing pretty much. Bait drill, do use that on occasion for certain aspects. This is the Corda line stripper and puller tool. You just sort of wrap your line around there and you can pull it tight. I made the mistake of trying to strip the line this way, and this little piece, just thin metal, bends really easily. So just if you have this or one of these, just make sure you strip the line that way because it can't pull through that hole and prevents that from bending. Bait floss, I do use that sometimes when I have to. Pretty much the same as dental floss, just this one fits in the quarter tackle box a lot better and looks carpier. That's why I have that. Canadian Carp Society business cards, hand those out on the bank whenever someone's asking questions. Now hooks. All different types of hooks. These are the Monster Carp Universal Perfection. I was going to try those this year. I never actually got around to it. Quarter Crank X. I love these hooks. These are size 2. I rarely use the size 2s. You can see size 4. Getting low on those. I did have a pack of size 6. I believe I used all those because those are my favorite right now. Wide gape. Chod hooks. Just the different styles I like to test out and use. And here's the Gardner Riga hooks. These are some of the nicest hooks for like a stiff hinge Riga. Whenever I tie those up and test those, that's a great pattern for that. That's why I carry those in there. Nice little package. Lighter, lights the kettle. Whenever I have to steam rigs straight and that sort of thing. And yeah, I guess I can clean all this out now. This is my ESP double corn. Just opened the pack. It was neatly in one of these compartments up here. But the reason I got this tackle box upgraded from my old bulky one is it fits in my rod sleeve, so it's not always stored upright, and that corn usually pops out and gets everywhere in there. But everything else in this box, nice little compartments, so it stays where it's supposed to. And that's basically it for my rig box. Those are the essentials I carry every day on the bank, and if you guys want to do a video like this as well, we'd gladly put it up here for everyone to see, because I find it's quite interesting to see the sort of materials everyone packs in their box, what's essential, what's not essential. Like I said, not all these are essential, but this box stores a ton, so I can carry those extra items with me on the bank, and they're always there and ready. So that's basically what I'm carried most of this season. It does change from year to year, so once it does change, I look forward to doing more of these videos in the years to come to show you guys what's inside my tackle box. I look forward to seeing what's inside yours. Thanks for watching.
Just gorgeous. Big scales. Absolutely love it. Stunning. Made my whole weekend right here.